I will not say I love my husband, but I've definitely gotten accustomed to him, that our lives are still better with him in it than without.
Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Kedkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
Welcome back to another episode of Couples Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean. Hi, I'm Dr. Ray.
And I'm Jean, and this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Please check us out online on our Facebook page, Couples Synergy, or our website, couplesynergy.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couples Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experience working with thousands of couples for nearly 20 years.
You know, everyone says you should work on your relationship, but nobody teaches us how. So we've created this podcast to teach people what they can do to create the relationship they've always dreamed of.
With the partner they fell in love with. Today on our podcast, we have Sophia Husnain. Thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is so exciting. We have a fellow co-author of the book. Get the book out. There we go. Perfect.
Overcoming
mediocrity.
Fearless
Yay.
women.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes. Jean
Love it.
and Sophia were co-authors in this book. So, definitely check out the book. You can get it on Amazon, and you could check out their stories. But we're going to dive deep into Sophia's story today. So before we do that, Sophia, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? How old are you? What do you do for a living?
Awesome. I'm 32 years old. I live in Aurora, Illinois, good old burbs. I have a 2-year-old. I've been married to my husband for 10 years. For my career, I actually, and if you've read the book, I went into nursing and was always intrigued by it. Some of my earliest memories actually are of visiting my grandmother when she had her open heart surgery. And I was about 3 or 4 years old at the time. And I just love medicine, everything to do with the human body. But, when I started practicing nursing, I realized how limited my reach was and the amount of impact I could make just by being an employee in our healthcare system. And obviously, nothing against our wonderful profession, because as you know, with COVID, nurses are truly the true heroes, running the show right now, guys. And I truly have such respect for a lot of my friends are nurses, and for the career. It's a very noble profession. But for myself, I knew that God had put me on earth to do a lot more, to reach hundreds, if not thousands of lives. And that's the wonderful thing of being an entrepreneur. You get to do things your way, and really, it's a roller coaster, but it's just such an incredible journey. And the people you meet, like I never would have met Jean,
Yeah,
Ray, had it not been for me taking that leap of faith and really kind of going out on my own. But I've been an entrepreneur now for about a full-time entrepreneur for a couple of years. And I love it. I love just combining my knowledge from my training, plus, everything that I've learned and self-taught over the years. And now with my events business that I've recently started, and just reaching more women and just sending more just messages of hope and especially now, I feel like we need it more than ever. So yeah, it's just been a very fulfilling, just awesome ride.
it's really interesting. It's a similar story that we have. We are raised a psychologist. I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and we really started our business to take couples work in a very different direction. And now we're moving away from the limits of that as well and going into the coaching model because there's so much more, and working with people holistically on all levels, that promotes permanent change, as opposed to, some of the more clinical stuff. It only sort of puts a Band-Aid on things or fixes things more temporarily. So we do the same thing where we work much more in depth. So let's start your story with where were you born, and tell us that part of your journey.
Yeah, so I was born overseas in Pakistan, and I have an older sister. My mom actually raised us as a single parent. And if you know kind of the history of the country itself, Pakistan is a very third world, very male dominant sort of society. Women are even now, I mean, things are definitely improving with the new generation, but women are still very much looked down to, just stay home and take care of kids, and the men sort of run the show. And poverty is a huge problem. Lack of education, just the rates of abuse and neglect for as far as children go. It's just a lot. It's a struggling society basically. And my mom actually, Jean and I were talking before we went live, and my mom was a U.S. citizen. She moved to the States back in the 70s, but she made a conscious decision to have us, my sister and I, back home, because she wanted so desperately for us to understand our roots and our culture, where we come from, our language, our religion, our people. She really wanted us to have that sort of connection, because I feel like when you live in a country like the States, and you sometimes you start to forget, where you come from, and you kind of start taking things for granted. And I mean, I'm so blessed that when she decided to move us here back in 2001, I was in 7th grade, and because the experiences that I've learned here in the States have also been life-changing, because I can't imagine my life if we were still back home. But so that was another huge sacrifice on her behalf, because she had to start her life all over again in the States. But yeah, growing up, we if you read the story in the book, we faced a lot of harassment. My mom could never hold down a job because her male employers would constantly harass her and ask her to do them favors, so she can keep her job, and to do a lot of just things that were going against her, her beliefs and whatnot. But so it was very difficult for her to support us because my dad was never really around. My mom and dad divorced when I was about a month old. So, but it was struggling times. I saw poverty from a very young age. Always living in fear, just really, not knowing what's going to happen the next day. We never really had a really strong male influence in our lives. No brothers, no male cousins, just really no aunts or like uncles really even. So it was a struggle to, have that kind of powerful male figure in our lives. So we had to become that as women. So, and moving to the States definitely helped that as well. Like I had a job as young as 13 years old, kind of helping my mom really support the household. And so a lot of those things really shape us into our adulthood and who we are today. And and that's really what the event that I host is about, all of our past struggles and how that transforms us into the people we are today, no matter how difficult our past has been and traumatic, and it leaves its scars, but I feel like we wouldn't be the people we are today.
How is divorce seen in Pakistan?
It's not a not a good thing. My mom was always kind of the black sheep in the family, very much kind of an outcast. So it's not very common to divorce, and it's like the last case resort, like really, because in our culture, the families sort of come together, and the marriage is not just between the two people, it's a whole family affair. So anytime there's a struggle, the whole tribe gets involved, and everybody really tries to keep the couple together. But yeah, it's really not a good thing. Mm-hmm. So my sister and I definitely faced a lot of that too, a lot of family just disapproval, and for the longest time I struggled with my own identity and who I am and why mom and dad separated, because a lot of things about my past I still don't really quite understand. And in our culture, as kids, you don't question your parents. And even now I struggle with that, because I still, as an adult, I have my own child now, but I still have all these questions, and I want to know things, and I want to challenge certain beliefs that still exist, but it's just something that you just don't do. And you have to be okay with that. So that's definitely that generational gap, like that different way of thinking.
What was that transition like, back to the US for you? How was that?
So we're Muslims, our religion. And when we first moved to the States, it was April of 2001, and then 9/11 happened. And so at the time, honestly, I didn't even know what the Twin Towers were. I had no idea what terrorism or any of these things meant. So it was a very rough transition, because even as as a seventh grader, even my teachers started to shift their behaviors towards me because I was the only Muslim girl in my school. And I didn't get it. I didn't understand why were our people so bad and why these bad things were happening. And throughout my teenage years, I desperately wanted to fit in. I wanted to be like my white friends and wanted to be that pretty girl or that well-liked popular kid in school, and so it translated later in my teenage years when I was about 16, between 16 and 18, to really just rebelling and just not being that good kid and causing a lot of trouble, getting in with the wrong crowd. Really just kind of like that was my kind of, I guess, lashing out in a way. My older sister, she was quite the opposite, actually. She was, my mom's right-hand man, just very, very good kid, perfect GPA, all these things. And I feel like sometimes parents will subconsciously compare their children as well. So always I felt like I could never just be that good enough person for my mom to be proud of. So I just stopped caring completely. And so a lot of lessons learned from the past, definitely. And it wasn't until, I will say, honestly, until I hit my 30s I feel like you kind of hit these stages where these light bulbs just kind of start going off in your head, and you really start to love and accept yourself for who you are, and kind of start to kind of rebuild that identity. And
in your story, I don't know if you know this, and I know these stories get really edited because they're really short, but when you talk about, having a piece of bread for dinner that you're sharing between your mom and your sister, and your basic needs are getting met, you actually sound very happy. And the struggle comes after that. The struggle comes, you're dealing with food, clothing, and shelter. And so when those basic needs are met, it's very satisfying and feels really good. And then when those needs are met where we're not thinking about it anymore, now the emotional stuff comes in, and the identity and the growth. And we've seen that as well. We're hikers, and when we are out there and we're just, our basic needs are met, it feels great. And then you get home and you get so bogged down. And what has your experience been with that? And is that accurate?
Yeah. Oh, yes. Oh my gosh, Jean, you really hit it on the nail. And that's so interesting because some of my happiest memories are from when I was a child. And you're right. And those were some of the happiest times. And I guess because I didn't quite understand what was happening, and I was just a kid, and, and my mom definitely tried to shelter us from a lot of everything that she went through. A lot of these things I didn't really even find out about until later. But I mean, I still have those memories, but it still wasn't as troubling, I guess, as when I entered my adulthood and questioning, so many different aspects of myself. But yeah, it was because it was just the three of us. It's always been my mom, my sister, and I, and it's always just kind of been us three. And we definitely had that bond. But I think as you get older, you get married, other people start entering your lives, and you almost start to feel like you kind of lose that bond that you had as kids or when you were younger. I definitely feel that with my sister because she moved away after she married and whatnot. But things change, relationships change, and it took me a while to adapt to it and be okay with it. And and thankfully, my husband, actually, his family still lives back home. So it gives me a chance to go and visit every other year. Yeah.
Can you tell us the story of how you met your husband?
Yeah. Oh, gosh. So going back to when I was telling you guys about my teenage wild years, right? I was 19, and I was actually in a very abusive relationship. And my mom, she, bless her heart, she was so worried, you guys. She was like, she's going to end up in jail, or she's going to end up in some big trouble. Like, this is not, things are not right. So her and my dad would be kind of in an on and off communication, not steady, but here and there they would talk. And he actually knew my husband's family, and my husband's father and my dad were friends before my husband's dad passed away. So he suggested to my mom, I know a guy, he lives in London, and he's a very good kid. He's very kosher. And so he might be a good match for me. And my mom brings up the idea, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. I'm this naive, 19-year-old. I'm like, sure, let's go to London. I want a free trip. Like, I want to go explore and have fun and whatever. So we go. I meet my husband, and he's the total opposite of me, you guys. He's and he was so nervous, poor thing. He was sweating profusely, and because it was my mom, my sister, my dad actually ended up meeting us there as well, and it was a very interesting trip. And I had the choice, because I know sometimes you're not really given a choice to say no. It's a very forced upon decision, but I couldn't really find a reason to say no, I guess. And but I did make a point to tell him about my history and everything about myself, because I'm like, I'm not going to start a relationship on a lie. I need to tell you who I am and what I've done. And so and I wanted to also make sure he's not just marrying me to come to the States, because that's another thing, is some people just want that visa, right, to come to the US. So we were in London for about a week, come back engaged to my husband, and he came to the States on the fiance visa. We had 90 days to get married, or he would be sent back. So it was a very just hurry up, get married. It was, and I was in nursing school at the time, just very young. And, and I love my husband, but that's something that if I could go back, I would change that. But so, yeah, I really did not truly know my husband until he moved here and he started living with us. And again, a son-in-law living with his mother-in-law and his wife is also a very looked down upon idealism, like kind of notion in our part of the culture. And people would make fun of him because my mom was kind of supporting us in the beginning. And so the family definitely did not respect him. There was a lot of drama with people talking, gossiping. And
you'd mentioned that you grew up without really any kind of male role modeling. How did that affect, relationships, growing up, and how you related with men, in your future?
Yeah, I think it honestly had a very negative impact in our lives, because my sister and I both, because basically we craved that attention so much, is we were willing to go to any lengths to get that kind of attention from a male. For example, my sister, she basically married the first guy she met out of college, because that was the first love that she felt from a man. Whether or not that was the right choice, I don't know. But we definitely were very, we hung on to that sort of male anytime we felt attention or, any kind of, and that led to a lot of bad decisions on my part, because I was in just some very, very bad relationships through high school and college and before I met my husband. And so it actually resulted in one of my ex-boyfriends going to jail, because he started to harass, and really I had to get a restraining order. Like I got to that point that it was just very, very toxic. So I feel like had I had that, I would have had better judgment perhaps, or been careful or seen the red flags or whatnot. But I do feel every child needs the love of a mother and a father, both. Obviously you can try your best to fill the void, but that's something me and my mom argue about all the time. It's like, you did your best, but I still needed that male sort of influence, the positive influence. But yeah, it definitely had its impact, and those decisions that I made, it basically changed the trajectory of my life, because I got married very young.
So having an arranged marriage really was not kind of customary for your family. It really was kind of a way to set you on the right path, maybe? My mom always kind of had this desire to have a part to play in both of my sister and my marriages. So it's like when I look at my cousins and the rest of my family, whether it be semi-love marriage, semi-arranged, the families definitely had a part to play in everybody's marriages throughout my whole family. So it was always sort of an expectation that they would have a say, or they would approve of our husbands or whatnot. But my sister, actually, she basically, and she was the older one, she was the one that was the golden child, and everybody expected her to do an arranged marriage, but she fell in love with her now husband in college, and nobody approved of him, none. And she basically is now kind of an outcast in our family, because she went against everybody's will and decided to marry him anyway.
That's interesting that you were the more rebellious one, and yet she ultimately fully rebelled.
Exactly.
When we look at the influence of a father on a child,
Mm-hmm.
when those needs aren't met, and it typically is through our sexuality that we start to get that type of attention at a very young age, when we don't know what to do with it, and we don't have
Mm-hmm.
male guidance. And, and for male children as well that don't have a strong influence from their dads, they get, they're more likely to be in prison. They're more likely to do drugs, drop out of school, all those kind of things. And I think the older generation, they didn't do such a good job at fathering or being involved in their children's lives. And so your story is a really natural pathway that happens to a lot of girls that don't have that male influence.
Absolutely. So when I decided to do the arranged, it was like a shock, like, oh my God. So it was literally, and you're absolutely right. And my sister, she held that against my mother for years, that my whole life, I did what you wanted my whole life. And this is what I want now. And my mom couldn't say anything. I mean, it was very almost sort of like a blackmail, like it was interesting. And my mom would cry to me all the time. And
yeah. So the laws of attraction, when you were on your own to date, you were attracting the wounded stuff. And then you had someone else say, hey, let me make that decision for you. I think I could do a better job than you, which is interesting. And then I think there's a belief in an arranged marriage that says we're going to make this work. And it's not based on love. It's more based on that loyalty and commitment. And so I think the pathway of people merging is very similar in the troubles we go through, but that cultural belief that, like you said, keeps you together, and being married is tough. It's really tough. And you have to grow through that. What would you say to someone who was maybe struggling in a relationship, and why you stuck it out?
People always ask me, Jean, because honestly, the reason I stay in my marriage is for my daughter, because I'm just so afraid of her going through that same path that my sister and I did without our dad. And I mean, you can co-parent and all that stuff, but it's still not the same. And my husband even has told me that he would move back home. I don't know if this is the right thought or not, but I don't want history repeating itself. I don't want the family to say like mother, like daughter. I almost don't want to give them that satisfaction of saying that. I will not say I love my husband, but I've definitely gotten accustomed to him, that our lives are still better with him in it than without. So for someone struggling, I would really ask you to just do a lot of inner work, because at the end of the day, we are responsible for ourselves, no matter how long we've been with our significant others, but do a lot of inner work and a lot of just, soul searching almost, and just figuring out, what is at the core, I guess, of the problem. And because I realized with my relationship with my husband, I feel like when I'm not at my best mental, emotional state, I'm not the best at our relationship either. So taking that accountability, I think, is so important. And I really brought it up to him as well, because he's someone that does not believe in any of this, speaking with a professional or just doing that work himself. But at the end of the day, it's you have to think about what really matters to you. And if you think you would be happier alone than with that person, or it's difficult. And obviously you guys are the experts at this. But yeah, for me, I knew that regardless of the troubles, I just did not want my daughter to one day ask me, like, could you have done this to make it work? Or could you have tried something else? Like that regret, I feel like I'm more afraid of the regret of what could happen in the future than just a petty fight, that we could easily work through, or work with, a couple like you guys. Or
I'm in the middle of writing a piece for Lifehack, and one of the things I'm talking about in this piece is the challenges that our generations are facing now are challenges that past generations have not had to deal with. And so couples are faced with evolving to another level that is unprecedented, and so we can't go to the older generations to get advice from them, because it's actually the older generations that are divorcing, right? And so they don't know how to have successful relationships. And so couples are really kind of on their own, trying to figure things out, right? And
Absolutely.
that resources and seeking out those resources is really important, but making sure that you are seeking out the correct resources, people who are going to be able to, talk about these new challenges that we're all facing and help you navigate that.
Absolutely. And, I think gratitude has really also helped my marriage as well, as just being grateful for everything that I have, despite its flaws and whatnot. Because when you look around and you look at other couples or their problems, you almost sort of compare, and you're just grateful because, as messed up as our relationship can be at times, there has never been infidelity, or there's never been any kind of trust issues or anything like that. I mean,
have you heard of the concept of synthetic happiness?
I haven't heard of that concept. No, I haven't.
So it's really interesting, and it has to do with what you're talking about. When you have something, and if you have the belief that this is something I'm going to own, you're going to be more satisfied with it, as opposed to going, well, what about that guy over there or that guy over there? That makes us unhappy to have all that choice, and when we go, this is what my thing is. The experiment they did was they had people take an art class and paint 7 paintings. And then they said, okay, you pick 2 of the paintings, and then out of those 2, you can keep 1. And half of the group had to choose that painting right there and then and couldn't change their mind. And the other half could change their mind within 4 days. And the people that had to choose, they were happy with their selection months later. They're like, yep, I got the one I wanted. It was great. I'm fine. And the ones that could change their mind for 4 days, they were like, I don't know if I did so well. And I think that is part of why arranged marriages are more successful. Actually, they're much more successful than love marriages, because there wasn't so much option. It was like, okay, this is it, and we're going to make this work. And this idea of the lifestyle, right? And we've seen plenty of couples stay together because they love their friends. They love how they interact as a couple in the world, even though they're not such a great couple. And there's a lot to be said for that security and stuff that you get from being in a relationship.
I'm so glad you said that, because a lot of times people will almost sort of put you down and say, like, well, if you don't love him, and why are you then they bring it all down to that one piece, like, well, but you don't love him, like, you're not in love with him, like that's such a disservice to yourself. Or what if you could find someone else? So I'm so glad you said that, Jean, because I hate that. When someone brings up those sort of preconceived, or you could be doing so much better with someone else, and I learned from my mother, because she, after her divorce, she did remarry, and it was the same thing. They both were deadbeat husbands, deadbeat fathers, just never involved in our lives. And again, like I said, there's still, I don't really know about, but there is some rumors of some infidelity and some, things like that, of that nature. So again, like that regret and that fear of regretting my choice is something that still keeps me in, and because I don't want to be that person that would end up in a worse situation, or make my daughter's life more difficult. Or
one of the things that and I'm going to totally get this wrong, you have a program called Women Disrupted, and it says something like, your mess is your
message.
Your mess is your message. Can you talk about the concept of Woman Disrupted and what your message is?
And and I kind of got the idea from the book, actually, and just hearing other women's stories, and it's just it's empowering, it's inspiring, it's humbling. It's so I wanted to just have a platform that embodies all of these challenges that different women face, from their past, and who they become as a result of, whether it be abuse, or someone like me who was diagnosed with a chronic illness, and everything else from my past, and everything that we endure in life, and who it shapes us into, who do we become? Because we have a choice. Either we can play victim, or we can choose to overcome it and then help others. So that's kind of where the idea of Woman Disrupted came from, and to just have a home for all these women that have a story to tell, that are now doing incredible things in our communities because of no matter how difficult their past has been. So I love this platform. I'm so proud of it. This is something brand new that we were working on earlier this year. So this is one of my 2020 blessings, is to have this platform now, and to your message is our theme for our January event, where our speakers are talking about, different topics as it pertains to women, not just corporate women, but also business women, stay-at-home moms. It's something that everybody can kind of relate to, no matter, where you're at in your career level or whatnot in your personal lives. And so our keynote speaker actually at our January event is, she was abducted. Basically everything you see on Criminal Minds or, Law and Order, she was abducted walking to her car, and everything that she endured as a result of it's a miracle that she's even alive, but everything that she has done as a result of that very, very traumatic incident, and thousands of lives that she's now impacting because of her non-for-profit that she started. So just stories like that, and just, giving women hope that it's okay. Whatever you're going through, it's actually a blessing.
Do you think it's also inspiring for men?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I do encourage men to come out as well and share, because I feel there's not enough men out there that are willing to, to share their stories, or because it's not just women issues. It's also a lot of men endure a lot of different trauma and difficult pasts as well. And I feel like sometimes it's harder for men because they're expected to, be the man and man up, or I feel like a lot of our men also struggle.
Unfortunately, men are kind of indoctrinated to keep everything bottled up inside, right? And there are specific cultures that are taught never to show any pain. For example, in the Ukraine, men are not supposed to show any physical pain whatsoever. And so this is a cultural thing. It's a societal thing. One of the things I talk about with men is that, in Hollywood, the men who are actually vulnerable and show vulnerable emotions are the comedic characters in the movie. And the men who are actually the heroes, they only show a few select emotions like anger or vengeance, and so that is a pattern that continues today. And, you're right. There are men out there, a lot of them, that are struggling. I get to hear those stories behind closed doors, but they're just not taught. They're not taken across that bridge, into manhood, where they can see that their emotional, bodies within are actually a source of strength for them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I would even say that your journey, you grew up in a very white neighborhood, white school. You were the only brown kid in your school.
Right.
And you had a lot of bullying. And, I think that's probably what helped you become the sensitive person that does this kind of work and can help men through that.
Absolutely. I mean, first generation American, myself, half Persian, half Filipino, did not know what culture I really was, right? Was I American? Was I Filipino? Was I Persian? And just did not fit in any of that. And so kind of had to find my own way, right? And also understand those vulnerable emotions that I was experiencing, and there was no outlet for that, right? There was no one to really resonate with. And so, that I totally get exactly what you're talking about here. And, I really encourage men out there to, join programs like what you're talking about and what you're planning on doing, because it's really important.
Absolutely. And I would love to have you at the event, Dr. Ray, and even speak at future events, because this is something that I'm going to keep continuing quarterly, or, having multiple events during the year. And you're right. Once you hear that perspective from someone else and you can relate to it, I think it really builds that confidence in the community. Like, yeah, we need to talk about this more, and it's okay to talk about it. You're in a safe space. You're not going to be, made fun of or talked about because of your experiences. So yeah, that's really my goal, and partnering with people like you guys that understand that message, so we can, do this outreach in communities and make it okay for people to share and not just share, but also get those action steps to get to that next level. Because it's okay to talk about something, but then what do you do about it? How are you gonna how are you going to heal? How are you going to grow? How are you going to help others? So that to me is the next piece, is having the right people at these events that can then hold your hand and walk you through that bridge like we talked about, because that's so huge. You can't just stay in that space.
This is exactly why we do the podcast, because, when Ray was talking about the media, everyone thinks everyone's got it down, and the movies that we see, they're fake. That's not really how people live or feel, or, and a lot of people are raised on TV. That's what their view is of the world, and it just isn't true. And so to share at this level is so healing. And I just want to say this, nobody's got it down, and everyone's got a story, and everyone's been hurt. And that is the human experience. And you're absolutely right. If your story stops there, then you're not really becoming what you came to become. And so for the last question, what would be some advice you would give someone who's really stuck in their mess right now? And what are some of the things that you did to advance yourself?
Oh, man. So number one step is, guys, come to the event. Get your tickets, and you get to see Dr. Ray and Jean at the event too. But, changing your circle of influence is so huge too, because if you are constantly with those people that are just downers, or that feed into that misery, or even those people that are always poor you, that's not the right circle to be in. You need to be in a circle of people that are overcomers, that do have their own story as well, and who inspire you and, build you up to that next level. Because that was the first thing I had to do, was, move away from a lot of those college friends, or those friends that I, knew from a long time, but they were on a different level than where I was trying to go. So that is so huge. And I always speak on this, like, change your circle. Who are your friends? Who do you listen to on a constant basis? And I actually, it's hard for me personally, because my husband is that, his nature is naturally very negative, and he naturally does tend to look at things from the worst kind of state of point of view. So I consciously have to make that effort every single day to feed myself with positive reinforcement, and listen to people that resonate with me and my mindset and whatnot. So it's a constant. It's almost like taking a shower every day. Like you have to give your mind that cleanse as well, and to really be conscious of who you're listening to. I've turned off the news. I've turned off, all of my radio, everything I used to listen to, because I realized for myself that staying in that victim mentality was not serving anybody or anything. Like I mentioned earlier, my relationship was struggling. I was a horrible parent. I was physically getting more ill also because of my mindset and my mental state. So it's a conscious decision, and it's up to that person to move away from that. But and I know you guys know this, I promise, life is so much better on the other side of that suffering and that victim mentality, and where you think God is punishing you, because that's something culturally in our culture. If something bad happens to you, it's God punishing you, or you're paying for some sin that you did. And that is so false, you guys. That is so not true. And look at every challenge as a blessing. Look at it from, and even like COVID times, small businesses that are failing, or people that are losing their jobs. This is the opportunity for you to start fresh and start over, and really learn from your mistakes. Like, what did I do wrong that my business or whatever I was doing was not pandemic proof? Like, how can I elevate to that next level? How can I make myself more bulletproof, moving forward? Or financial decisions. Like, I have learned a lot from those. And so always looking to that next step, like how will this benefit me in the long run? Like, what is the lesson here? What is the silver lining? Always kind of not staying in this present space, but always just thinking ahead. And how is this challenge really a blessing?
So I totally agree with that you need to be putting different information into your head. And one of the programs that we run, it's a free program every Tuesday night through our program called Connections, which you can find through our website. We just give a different message every Tuesday to, life's tough. We're in this as a community. We have a Facebook online community, Couple Synergy community, where we do that and give those kind of messages. So where could people find tickets for your event?
Yeah, so womandisrupted.com is the website. Woman with an A, womandisrupted.com. Everything is laid out right there. It has the event description, what ticket you should buy, all that stuff. All the information is there. You can also just message me on Facebook, guys, if you have a question about the event or just in general, if the event doesn't happen.
And be sure to let Sophia know that you heard about this event on Couples Synergy.
Yay, yes. Yes, please do. Please connect with us. And because I love to personally talk to every guest that comes to my events. And so I would love to connect with you guys and you get to see these two wonderful people at the event. So I'm so excited. I miss live events. I'm so excited for it.
I know we have our weekend intensive that's scheduled in April. We had to, kind of reschedule that because of COVID. So, hopefully keeping our fingers crossed that everything's going to be good, right?
Exactly. Well, we'll pray on it. Good vibes. I'm keeping that good. Nope, it's gonna happen. Universe will decide. But yeah, just positive.
Well,
juju.
Sophia, we want to thank you so much for being on Couple Synergy today. This has been wonderful.
Thank you both so much. Thank you, Jean, for reaching out.
Yeah, I'm glad we got to get together. People have been sharing their stories since the beginning of time to grow and heal and bond. And we hope that by you sharing your story, it's enriched your life and the lives of our listeners.
Absolutely. Thank you to you both.
For all of you listening, please subscribe to our podcast and please leave us a review. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestions, or would like to be considered as a guest on Couple Synergy, you can email us at contact@couplesynergy.com. For more information about Couple Synergy and our programs such as the Couples Weekend Intensive, Connections as well, and our premier program called Couple to Couple, look us up online at couplesynergy.com.
And if you know someone who could benefit from this episode, please download it and share it. And thank you for listening.
Until next time, synergize your life and synergize your love.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Ketkodian. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.